Hello, all there. Very good evening and a warm welcome to Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program. My name is Pakwesi Asare. Thanks very much for making a date with us here on the program. We're streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on your DSTV channel 279. Well, tonight's government treasury bill auction surges with records 15% oversubscription as interest rates continue to soar, hovering between 27 to 31%. Yes, that's pretty high. We're going to explore the implications of this on the economy as well as on businesses. Also, later tonight, we'll bring you that part 2 of our discussion with renowned economist Kwame Pianim, reacting to matters concerning the central bank. You know, the Bank of Ghana has been in the news over the past few weeks for all the wrong reasons. The minority is threatening a demonstration demanding the resignation of the central bank governor as well as his 2 deputies. We'll bring you that second part of our discussion with Kwame Pianim, where he talks about the central bank and its board of directors and their role in all that's been happening over the past few years. He's also been speaking strongly on the banking sector crisis and some decisions that were taken by the central bank. All this and more coming up in the next 45 minutes. My name is Pakwesi Asare. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you more.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint, and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, 1 bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
Artificial intelligence, creativity and sustainability. Join this year's Africa Rising 6, brought to you by the International Advertising Association IAA at the Kempinski Hotel, Gold Coast City, as we uncover the power of building future-ready brands on 5th and 6th September. Speakers Sasan Saidi, World Chairman and President, International Advertising Association; Andrew Techiapia, Co-Founder and MD, ZPay; Lethepu Machaba, Independent Business Leader, former Vice President of Home Care, Unilever; Ivan Moroki, CEO, Kanta South Africa; Guy Parker, Chief Executive, Advertising Standards Authority, United Kingdom; Steve Papaiko, CEO, Extreme Ideas; Sami Awuku, Director General, National Lottery Authority, and many more. This conference is sponsored by Margins Group, ZPay, Google, MTN, GOIL and NLA, Media Partners, CNN, Media General, Graphic Communication Group. Register now at www.africarising.iaaglobal.org for more information, or contact Nanajwa on 0242 528 431 or the AAG Secretariat 0244 440477.
Right, welcome back to Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. If you just tune in, call a friend to tune in, because in the second part of this program, we'll be bringing you that all-important interview with economist Kwame Pianim, where he talks about the central bank and the role of the board of directors and what they've done in all this, in all that's been happening over the past few years. He also talks about the banking sector crisis and some of the decisions that were taken by the central bank, and he's going to share his thoughts on that. So that comes up later in the second part of this program. But let's talk about interest rates on treasury bills, because subscriptions for government's treasury bills exceeded its target of 3.064 billion cedis, while the market witnessed an oversubscription to raise some 3.53 billion cedis as interest rates continue to surge. For the past 2 weeks, the government has managed to exceed its treasury bill targets, even though they were overambitious.
In this week's auction were accepted. According to the latest results by the Bank of Ghana, interest rates went up across the yield curve. This comes after the government forced rates down in March 2023 following the completion of the first phase of the domestic debt exchange program. Interest rates are currently hovering between 27.36 to 31.65%. According to the results, the target was oversubscribed by almost 463 million cedis. However, the continuous increase in the interest rate will make maturities expensive for the government to fulfill. Interest rates for the 91-day and 182-day bills have increased to about 27% and 28.6% respectively. For the 364-day bills, interest rates have increased to 31.65%. Government has planned to raise about 2.6 billion cedis in the next auction, a target that may seem unambitious, but market watchers predict government may exceed that target by the end of the auction.
Right, so we're going to stay a while longer on this developing story. Let's go live on the phone lines now to speak to Professor John Gachi. He's the University of Cape Coast Business School. Thank you very much, Prof, for your time, and good to have you on Business Focus. Hello, Professor Gachi, can you hear me? Hello, good evening, Professor Gachi, can you hear me? Well, I'm afraid we're having difficulties with our phone lines. We're trying to reach Professor John Gachi to help us to do some analysis on the issue of treasury bills and the soaring interest rate we're seeing over the last few weeks, and what this really means for the economy as well as businesses. Obviously, you know that once the interest rate on treasury bills is between 27 and 31%, it means that no bank is going to lend below the treasury bill rate, and that's going to perpetuate the high interest rate regime we're seeing over the past few years. Professor Gachi, I'm told, joins us back on the lines. Thank you very much, sir, for your time, and good to have you on Business Focus.
Thank you.
So you've been monitoring activities on the market. Just a couple of days ago, government's communication suggested some excitement that we're seeing a lot of people, participate in the debt exchange program, the dollar-denominated debt exchange program. Some over 70% of subscription. We're also hearing that Cocoa Board is also excited that we're seeing some 90% of people tendering their old bonds for the newer ones. On the flip side, interest rates on treasury bills are going up, hovering between 27 and 31%. What is enticing people beyond the high interest rate to go in for these treasury bills?
Well, it is because they don't have alternative. So they are forced to invest in the treasury bill. And as a result, we see the demand for treasury bill going up, hence the pricing also going up. If you take the financial institution, for example, they mobilize deposits, that is at some cost to them, and they cannot keep the deposit without turning the deposit into some investment. And when they look around, the markets have been disrupted so much that longer-term instruments are no more feasible, and therefore they gravitate towards treasury bills.
But this is obviously going to make maturities more expensive for government. Aren't these investors worried about government's own ability to fulfill this part of the bargain, seeing that we're just into a domestic debt exchange program?
Well, I think you need to first of all appreciate that there is a possible maturity risk for government if you are using short-term borrowing through the treasury bill to finance longer-term maturing instruments. That is what we call maturity mismatch, and that will actually pose some risk for the government. And that is why some people are of the thinking that perhaps if the care is not taken, the debt exchange program may come to treasury bill also, because government may get to a point that it cannot pay the interest on treasury bills. So these are the realities that we'll have to work out.
Pretty much interesting. Even beyond what we're seeing now, interest rates between 27 and 31%. I mean, what would this mean for ordinary borrowers? Because you and I know that no bank would lend below the interest, the treasury bill rate, which is about 31%. So, I mean, for businesses who want to invest and expand, into other areas, what are the implications for them?
Well, it's a difficult situation. The rate at which lending is done to the private sector and individuals is so much that it's so costly that is affecting even purchasing of items around for household, because they cannot take household loans from the banks. The same thing applies to the businesses. So the businesses are in very difficult times, and those who attempt to take bank loans, they change their cost structure heavily because of the interest cost. So we are actually in a very disrupted, distorted, and very difficult time for businesses and for households.
So this short-term end of the market, this is where we're seeing a lot of the borrowing go on in the past few months, because, again, the international markets have been shut out to government. Also, the domestic bond market appears to have been dead over a period of time. Based on your own observation, how soon can we see a recovery of the domestic bond market?
I don't know about that. It takes a successive government to build the capital market, but they have been destroyed. It can be repaired with time, and that timeline will depend on strategies put in place. As we speak, the strategy is just to exchange bonds and they start trading. As to whether the government will have even money to pay along the path of maturity and the coupon, no one can tell. So I think that is those who are managing the capital market. They are the ones supposed to bring strategy in place. Then we can assess the strategy and see whether the strategy can bring the market back to active situation in 2024 or further away.
Right, Prof. Gakye, can you hold on for me on the line? I'll come back to you to wrap up on some very controversial issues about the Bank of Ghana in my interview with renowned economist Kwame Pianim, but I'll come back to you later on that subject. Let me go to Zoom now and speak to Joe Jackson, who is with Dalex Finance. He's had many difficulties with the short-term end of the market and the issue of interest rates and how highly they've been running over the past few months. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for your time, and good to have you on Business Focus. You certainly won't be excited about what we're seeing on the short term under the market.
Excited is putting it mildly. I'm horrified. That's the real word. I'm horrified that the rate continues to go up. And the argument is simple. If this government or those that manage our economy cannot pay cocoa bills at 31%, how can, and drop it all the way down to 12%, how can they be paying T bills at 31%? If they can't pay bonds, multi-year bonds, at a weighted average of 19%, how can they be paying 90-day bills at 27+%? That it just beggars my understanding, and we are piling up debt, domestic debt, again, like it's going out of fashion. I've heard some analysis made, namely by the IMF rep for this country, Dr. Leandro Medina. And he says that for so long as the real rates remain negative, that is that for so long as the inflation rate is higher than the T-bill rate, maybe we shouldn't be that worried. I am worried. I am worried because better countries than us, who are facing even less challenging circumstances, all have negative rates. If you go to the UK, inflation is 7.9%. Government treasuries are 4.36 to 4.4%. Is that not a negative rate? If you go to Japan, inflation is at 3.3%. Government treasuries are at 0.65%. Is that not a negative rate? In any case, that kind of analysis goes on to say that for so long as the government's revenue is growing at a rate higher than inflation, for so long as the country's growth rate is higher than inflation, we are fine. Hello? Ghana's inflation rate is 43%. Is the government of Ghana's revenue growing at 43+%? Growth rate by the mid-year budget was predicted at 1.5%. Is the country growing at 43%? That argument cannot hold. And any analyst who follows that argument, forgive me, I think is treading down the wrong path. Rates must come down. If we can't pay multi-year bonds at 19% and have a domestic debt exchange, if we can't pay cocoa bills at 31% and have a domestic debt exchange, then just maybe we can't pay treasury bills at 31% and we must have a domestic debt exchange.
But isn't it also because government is such a high-risk borrower?
But if government is a high-risk borrower, so the fact that you're a high-risk borrower, so then those who are giving the government money should be asking themselves, does it make sense? If you come to me today and you are a high-risk borrower, I will turn you away and say you are too high risk. Because you see, the very heights that the rates can go to compensate for a high-risk borrower are the same heights that will cause that borrower to default. If your risk is so high, then when you come to me as a borrower, I have to charge you 10% per month to compensate, then sorry, I'm not going to lend to you at all.
But that's ultimately going to crash the economy. You know, as I know, that the international capital markets have been shut out to governments. The bond market is very inactive. So the short-term end appears to be the only possible way out for government then.
You know, I would have agreed with that argument, except in March this year, when the government said, I won't borrow at these rates. Take your money back and come back to me at rates that make more sense. The rate moved from 30+%
to about 27 or so.
Or to 19%
right
before it started again. Let's do the same thing. Desperate times require desperate measures. If this is what it requires to bring the rate down, let's do it. But what we are doing now is as if we are all sleepwalking into another crisis.
All right. Thank you, Joe Jackson. You want to say something to wrap up?
No, it's fine.
All right.
It's fine. I was just saying that we should bring the rates down. Those who are lending should bring the rates down. Those who are borrowing should also bring the rates down.
Thank you very much, Joe Jackson, Director of Operations at Dalex Finance. Let me go back to Professor John Gachi. Prof, so I just wanted to take your thoughts on my discussions with Kwame Pianim last week. He raised some fundamental issues with some of the reforms that were introduced by the Bank of Ghana. For instance, the idea that, managing directors of banks could only serve a 10-year term limit. He says that was problematic and even goes further to suggest that, such reforms were introduced to get people like Frank Edu and co out of the banking system. Is this a suggestion you agree with?
The point is not clear. Can you rehash the point, please?
Yes, I was talking about some of the banking sector reforms that were introduced when this, of course, was implemented by this government. And in my discussion with Kwame Pianim, for instance, he raised fundamental concerns about the 10-year limits for managing directors of banks and said he found issues with it and also suggested that he thought that it was introduced to get people like Frank Edu out of the banking system. Is this something you agree with?
Well, I think when at 9:30, for example, was being discussed to the industry, I was there. The players raised concern about the limit placed on chief executives and some top officials of the bank about that particular thing. But I think they were not minded to take the wisdom in the concern that was raised. If you look at it from experience point of view, somebody may be in the banking sector as a chief executive, well experienced, but it's not even up to 60 years. So what do we do with such people with a wealth of experience to manage banks? So it's problematic. It's things that we can look at.
But are these not good corporate governance policies that are, copied from best economies around the globe?
I think that experience is an important aspect of good corporate governance. So if you throw experience away as a part of the package of good governance, it's problematic. However, there are some aspects of that reform that is very important, but also gives too much power to the central bank. And if care is not taken, it's not checked, the central bank will be deciding those who even be on the boards of commercial banks. I'm
glad you talk about that because we're going to be playing that interview shortly where he talks about the board of directors. And I had raised one particular issue with him, for instance, about why the governor of the Bank of Ghana, who chairs the Monetary Policy Committee, is also the chairman of the board of directors of the bank. Why will that be? Don't you find a problem with it?
Yes, but when you look at many central banks across the world have that structure. Perhaps if we have something very important that goes against that structure, we can raise it so that our corporate governance structure within the central bank system can be unique. So we generally, corporate governance, we do not have the chief executive being the chairman of the board. But in many central banks, we have that structure. But if we have problem with that, we need to bring out the problem and deal with. And what it also means is that anytime the governor speaks, he speaks as the chair and he speaks as the governor of the Bank of Ghana. So you do not need to go to the board for board to intervene in anything. So that is why the problem is. So we need to articulate what we think is different and it would not be helpful for corporate governance. Then we can tackle that aspect. But the point I was making is that the rule is that when a commercial bank selects their board of directors, they need to subject the board of directors to interview and whatever of the Bank of Ghana. And many a times, they even ask you which political party you belong to. And they will use those answers to assess whether you should be on the board or not. And I think with the polarized nature of the central bank, with the infiltration of politics into the central bank, that is very dangerous for corporate governance.
That's very interesting because Kwame Pianim also raised issues like that the bank, either the Bank of Ghana had absolutely no business in determining who is on the board of, who is a director of a bank, you know, on the board of a bank, that the central bank didn't have the right to do so. I mean, I think that's in tandem with what you're saying today.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying. In fact, it doesn't end with the board of directors. It's also about the chief executive. I think it's also about chief finance officer. It's about the internal auditor. The Bank of Ghana must okay those people before they are appointed. And when you look at those things, you see that you are giving too much power to the bank, and the bank is selecting those who be on the bank, on the commercial bank, and it's regulating the activities of the commercial bank. And that is counterproductive. That gives too much power to the bank. And the bank, if they don't like you, they don't want you to be on that board, they will not allow you to do. And that is exactly what is happening.
Thank you very much, Professor John Gachi. He's a Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School here on Business Focus, talking to us. We're going to go for a quick break. When we return, we'll play that interview, the second part of that discussion with renowned economist Kwame Pianim.
The sweet scent of rose in the morning brings me so much joy. Inspired by damask rose and infused with 100% natural rose oil. Introducing new Cleansoft Perfume Beads Washing Powder. It's like bringing a garden with you everywhere with this wonderful perfume. Take a garden with you everywhere you go with Cleansoft Perfume Beads Washing Powder.
When the sun rises, there is hope. While this hope lingers on, the citizens look up to the government, the economy, the national development agenda, and everything in between.
On Ghana Tonight, it's our utmost priority to bring you insightful conversations on the economy, break down the biggest issues while setting the agenda.
We have often talked about the overbearing power and influence of the president. We also know that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so to make the governor of the Bank of Ghana the same person who chairs the board of directors makes him absolutely powerful. And, you know, an insensitive and corrupt governor will do the worst.
No, his work is technical.
So in all sincerity, Mr. Paynim, if we are to modify our laws and the systems that we operate, is this something that you'd like us to keep moving into the future, that the governor also doubles as the chairman of the board of directors of the bank?
Definitely, definitely. The only time I had a disagreement with Dr. Paul Akwa, when we were setting up the Monetary Policy Committee, I said, you as governor should not chair it. Let's get somebody else to chair it, so that you go with your management, present your perspectives on the economy and so forth. Let the other members...
What we have now, he chairs the Monetary Policy Committee, he chairs the board of directors,
no,
he's also...
I'm saying that. Why did I say that? Because I said, Ghanaians, when the chairman, if he happens to be a bad chairman, and indicates the direction he wants the debate to take, everybody will follow that. But I say, you are different. You present the issues carefully.
We don't need good people. What we need are good laws and institutions.
Yeah.
So what if we got a bad person then?
Look,
you know.
Look, we know when President Obama was here, say, don't follow strong men, follow strong institutions and laws.
Right.
He was only half correct. Look at America. Somebody with a strong personality and populist president comes in and he subverts the laws, the rules, and the constitution. Look at UK. Johnson comes in, his personality. So you need men and women of professional competence and personal integrity, together with good institutions and laws, for the system to work. So with the Ghana culture, I'm telling you, it's good we said the governor, do your own thing. You know, when Kufuor came in, when we started this Central Bank Independence, Nika Martifiu was on the board, and he used to call himself the senior director. His job was linking with the president and all that to make sure that whatever was being done was understood by the president, and that the bank also understood. Because Kufuor, when he was opening the Monetary Policy Committee, said, monetary policy should not be made in a vacuum. That is, take the society into consideration, take economic development into consideration. Don't let's focus just on killing inflation. Some people tell, some Latin American countries, they use inflation to develop. If you inflate the economy by printing money and you use it to grow cassava and maize, 3 months, it's on the market, it goes in, it's absorbed the currency. So it can be used, but if you are trying to use it, it can also backfire. So what I'm saying is that at Bank of Ghana, the governor being his own chairman, there's no problem with that. Because the technical issue, when you come to have the Monetary Policy Committee, where I would have liked somebody else to chair, not the governor, because the somebody and the other members who are from outside, who are in the policy committee, will then ask questions. What are the implications for that? Before you go to the press conference, you've answered those questions, the effect on women, effect on market, and all that. But that law, I think, is from experience. We learn from experience and change it. So the government is the only one.
But as a stance, you don't think it needs to be changed?
No, I don't think so.
We're doing some quick research, and we found out quite interestingly that in comparison to other African countries with either the same or, you know, better economies, like Kenya, for instance, which pays $3,000 to its board of directors, and Nigeria pays $2,000 respectively. And then we have Ghana paying a whopping $8,000 to each of the board members. Huge issue about corporate governance.
Is it designated in dollars?
Yes, in dollars.
If it's designated in dollars, they are disobeying their own rule, which says that everything should be... Look, the elders say that, you know, ants, they march on, they follow one another. When you get to stand in front of them inside it, they start biting you, climbing all over you. They say you don't stand within an ant, marching ant corps to pick them. You move away from there. tempers are very high about, we are blaming this
I get you,
unprecedented economic crisis,
yeah.
on Bank of Ghana. I say that's not hitting the drum, you are hitting on the side.
Right.
And then we are saying that plans they had for building is also being commingled with it.
Right.
And then what they are paying the other, as far as I'm concerned, when I was board chair of Airtel Ghana, they wanted to pay the board members what they call local allowances. I say no, we pay the same international rates. That's what we do as Airtel, India, Airtel, Europe, Airtel, this and that. That's the same thing. So that we expect them to do the same work. I don't mind if Bank of Ghana directors are being paid $10,000, as long as they do their job and do it correctly.
No, I need to come back to you on this one.
Yeah.
You don't mind if they are being paid $10,000 for as long as they do their work well.
Yeah.
I just gave you a comparison with other African countries and other economies that are doing far better, like Nigeria, that's paying $2,000, like Kenya, that's paying them $3,000, and we are paying $8,000. Look at the difference in that. Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana. And it's even been priced in dollars. For the Bank of Ghana, that's supposed to ensure price stability. And so if the cedi depreciates against the dollar, then they're going to get a lot more. So where's the sincerity in fighting or ensuring that we have a stable exchange rate?
No, I think that this is a matter which can be fought later. You see, when people are being paid what is their due, as far as I'm concerned, my question would have been, these board members of Bank of Ghana, do they read their minutes properly and go well prepared to answer questions to support the governor and tackling his issues? For example, this crisis that was coming, I would like to know if they will open up transparently for us to do a good search as to what actually happened. What was the role of the directors of the Bank of Ghana? I know one of them, a good economist, is also a friend of the president. Did they have opportunity to go to the president and say, look, you are pushing Bank of Ghana into a direction that will destroy its ability to be the reserve bank for the banks and also to be your bank. And it's because your finances are being mismanaged. That is important to me. The other countries, to me, if you're a director and you are being properly compensated, you don't get involved in procurement as some other directors do get. You don't try to be a supplier to that one. That is more important to me. What you are being paid, maybe they did their own assessment and said, for our governors, we want them to be able to do that. That's what we are paying them.
But Mr. Pierre, I need you to comment on this, and you've got to comment on it. That why should the Bank of Ghana be quoting in dollars?
If they are quoting in dollars, it's wrong because they say that nobody else should do that.
Right.
And charity should start at home. But if they designate it in dollars and say it's payable at an agreed exchange rate, which means to make the Bank of Ghana be able to budget for it, you have to say that you review the exchange rate maybe half yearly, so that you start in the January exchange rate, you pay until June, and at June you revise it, and then use the June exchange rate and pay until December, so that you don't have a conflict of hoping your cedi will depreciate before you get that.
My final question to you, Mr. Pierre, don't you think that the reason for all this backlash that the Bank of Ghana governor and his deputies are receiving is also because of how they handled the issues of the banking sector crisis and the reforms, and that's why people are not being lenient to them in all that's happening? And I'm sure that you have your own views on how they handled some of the issues relating to the banking crisis and some of the reforms that they brought into the banking industry.
Yeah, I mean, everybody will have their point of view as to how best certain things should have been handled. Look, you take a situation as you found it. the governors came in, we had a lot of difficulties with banks that have been giving licenses. People were using their banking license as a way to steal depositors' funds for doing things, and they had to clean it up. In the cleaning up, I have my own views as to how they could have gone about it. But as for that, everybody have their own views. And of course, people are angry with them. The anger that people have, that is pushing people onto the streets, is not against the Bank of Ghana. They are just a proxy, as I said.
But they implemented it, including reforms such as CEOs having to retire after.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I did not agree with some of them. I personally wrote a memo to the governor to say, you are on very slippery slope. They had it as part of the draft. Nobody above 70 could be a director. And I said, what are you telling the president? He's over 70. That is not competent enough to be a director of a bank, but is competent to be chief executive of this country. They removed it. And I said, a young man becomes managing director at 40. At 10 years, 50, he's reached his prime. Says you go and look for another job. It doesn't make sense. But it seems some of the laws were made to target people like Frank Edu to get them out, just as the Nigerian law was made.
How do you know this?
I'm a Ghanaian.
That a law was made to target one man, Frank Edu.
Yeah, people, Frank is one of the best commercial bankers. People say he's arrogant. But in Ghana, when you are good and you are moving in the right direction and you do, they say you are arrogant. So I didn't agree to that. And Bank of Ghana should not be dictating to shareholders who become their directors. It's not, but the law was put there. But that's the law that we all should have helped craft, all of us. But in Ghana, when Rawlings came in and said, we should kill everybody who are 40, everyone said, yeah, he was barely 30. But he lived to 64, and I'm sure he would have liked to have gone to 70 and 80.
69.
69. But did they think that he should be shot before then? So when you are young, you don't think you are going to grow, So what we need to do, soberly, frankly, honestly, sit down, review what might have gone wrong and change them. Bank of Ghana, at the board level, if you have level-headed, experienced people there, they are the ones to say, this law we are making seems to be in conflict with what we are doing. Or maybe the allowances to directors, we should look at comparable
rates
in Africa. But look, to me, Ghana, we are exceptional. But we are not using our exception to grow. I don't want Ghana to be compared to, a friend of mine was almost in tears. He was trying to get American colonies to say that Ghana, they should help us, and our democracy is not growing. Say, what are you talking about? You are doing better than Congo, than Kenya, than Sudan. We don't compare ourselves with those countries, and Niger, and those places. We think we are better than that. But we should learn from our experiences all the years and then move on. Don't let us sacrifice one person. It won't help us. The current governors, they know the lay of the land.
You're making a very, very, very strong case for the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Is he your friend? You want to save him his job?
No. The governor doesn't need his job. When he left Bank of Ghana, he quickly got a job with the African Development Bank. There are a lot of international financial institutions who will be happy to take him. Let me confess, he's a protege of Dr. Paul Akwa. I know them. When he was director of banking, I knew him. When he became a governor, the same way I knew Vice President Baumia, when he was personal assistant to Paul before he was made vice president. So I knew him. Afare, who is now Maxwell, who is now deputy governor, then became the personal assistant. I know them. But what I'm saying that is for Ghana, the experience they've gained in this crisis, we don't want to lose that experience. If we don't learn from this experience, we are not going to go. And if you remove him, who is going to replace him? The same Minister for Finance who has caused this big crisis, unprecedented, and still sitting there. The same president who has supervised the crisis we are in, who have never accepted that we are in a crisis, the net result of our failure to accept the depth of the crisis we are in is what is, packaged nicely in the Bank of Ghana's report, the 60 billion loss. It shows the magnitude of the magnitude of the problem we had to solve, the magnitude of the adjustment we needed to make. IMF couldn't help alone, the external there couldn't help, this haircut couldn't help. We needed to raid the piggy bank, Bank of Ghana, and we raided it. We should make sure the rules are clear. When it's being raided, they should be responsible direct to Parliament, not through the Minister for Finance. For the Minister for Finance to admit that he's doing something wrong and is being bailed out from Bank of Ghana, he should accept his incompetence. He will not accept it. You sack people for incompetence, for fraud. Neither has been committed. They saved us. Otherwise, 3 years ago, people would have been on the street. There would have been no leader on the street. And Ghana would have been like the other countries where people are perpetually.
I'm afraid we've got to leave it here, Mr. Pianim. Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
It does get better anytime your favorite shop, Melcom, says it's there for you and got you covered with all your daily need items. Continue shopping on products ranging from groceries, stationery, electronics, homeware, kitchenware, furniture, home decor, electrical, and many more at low prices. Terms and conditions apply. Melcom, where Ghana shops.
Ghana coming out again, the same squad. For the ball, he's got it! Throw it down, pin!
Sports Station, Mondays, 9 p.m. on TV3.
Sports Station is brought to you by Betway, Nesta Mouthwash.
Flamingo Paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Welcome to tonight.